Okay. Double take. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Anesu Mautsa. How ya doing? Okay. And this is my double take. Okay, my name is Anesu Mautsa. I'm born in Zimbabwe but grew up in South Africa. Who am I? What do? I am a creative. I am a lover of Jesus Christ. And currently I am going to do my honors next year at Vega in marketing, but right now I'm kind of in limbo, so I'm really just focusing on my work, on my projects. As a creative, I'm a poet and I do paint, but more of a poet than a painter, and I enjoy saying spoken word. So it's funny, I used to always love words. I've always had an obsession with words, but I never thought that I had the ability to write poetry. And even if I wrote something, I didn't have the confidence to share it because I felt, I guess, inadequate. And so in first year, I remember having a friend who had a blog, and she used to write all the time, and she was like, Ness, just write. And I was like, no, but I'm not deep. My vocab isn't that great. And you know how poets use a lot of, like some poets use a lot of deep language. I had all these, I guess, misconceptions about what poetry really is. And so she encouraged me to start writing. So I started a blog, and my first poem was called I Write. And just the last bit of it, I wrote it down here. It says, I write what I feel using what I know to come up with an imitation of what I think the definition of poetry is. I write me. And I realized at that time that poetry was just about you sharing who you really are in the form of words. So it doesn't matter how deep it is or what vocab you use, it's you. And from that point I started writing a lot, and it's been interesting. So I started a blog and I started posting on there, but I'm always altering and like changing my work every now and again because you grow throughout the process. So yeah, I started in first year, and it's mostly over the past 2 years I've been performing a lot more, which has been nice, taking myself out of my comfort zone. So off of just the computer, but now in front of people, stretching myself, and it's been a great journey. Yeah, it's been a great journey. Favorite performance, so I worked with Sleeky Jnr earlier on this year. Amazing poet, and she had this workshop called I can't remember. So she had this workshop for all these poets, and so I did that workshop with her, and so she challenged the way that we write. Told us to go outside and, let's say, pick a stone and write from that, or write from another person's point of view, and I've never written like that. So she gave us tips and tricks on how to write good poetry and how to get out of your comfort zone and get comfortable in the unknown. And so that was my favorite performance, because I felt like, so we got to perform two things, one of our previous poems and one of the poems which we wrote throughout the workshop. And that was my favorite project because it really pushed me to be authentic in a way that I've never been authentic. It pushed me to write in a way that I've never ever written before, and the outcome was just a whole different version of myself. Like, I got acquainted with a different version of myself. So I'll probably share the poem I wrote throughout the workshop, like at the end of this. Yeah. Some of the lessons that I've learned. Firstly, this journey is about you. It's all about you and who you are and what you want to share. And so I think when you're writing from that place, it's easier to be more authentic. It's easier to pour yourself out than when you're writing from the point of what would other people think of my words, or how are people going to receive this. So that's the first lesson I've learned. It's all about you. Secondly, authenticity and vulnerability is liberating. When I started being real with myself, because especially with poetry, I mean, it's such a personal process that you have to actually deal with things that you never wanted or expected to deal with. And it's quite they can be painful, you know, but it's coming face to face with things that maybe have hurt you or changed you or impacted your life in a negative or a positive way. And so that leads you to liberation. It liberates you. So authenticity and vulnerability is liberating. Third thing, bringing God into the process. I think a lot of the best pieces that I've written have been from a place where God is the center, and yes, I shared a poem earlier on that it didn't necessarily have God in it, but the poems that I have written at the end, a lot of them have God at the end, and it just doesn't, my poetry just doesn't work without God being the center. Whether he's mentioned in the poem or not, God is at the center of everything. God is at the center of my creativity, and this is the part of him that's in me that I get to share with everyone, so I can minister through my poetry. And then the last two lessons, being intentional. You have to be intentional. It's easy to say, it's fine, I'm gonna write when I feel like it. It's fine, writer's block. And yes, we do get writer's block, but you have to be intentional. If you want to start a project, if you want to go and speak at an open mic, if you want to get out of your comfort zone, you have to be intentional. So push yourself, being intentional. And the last one, which is funny because I spoke about being intentional, but it goes hand in hand with that, being patient with yourself. So as much as you can be intentional and push yourself out of your comfort zone and everything, you have to be patient as well, because some of the best pieces take time. Some of the best pieces are written over years, and that's what Sibokazi taught us as well. Go back to your old pieces, alter them, change them, add to them. You can use them to create a new piece as well. It's progressive. This whole thing, this whole journey of poetry is progressive. So hey, be patient with yourself, be patient with your journey, and yeah. I think, I've touched on it in the previous questions, but God is the core of who I am, and just having that my poetry is an extension of who he is. And I think that's the role it's played, it's been the major thing. I wouldn't have known that this was a gifting that I had if it wasn't for God, if it wasn't for God opening that opportunity with a friend of mine who said, just start and see how, and then that's God providing places for me to speak, providing workshops, providing opportunities like this interview to share. I mean, hey, so my faith has played a major role in my whole journey, because this is just an extension of who he is, and it's a blessing to be able to share with other people in the form of words. Currently, a couple of projects I'm working on. So I'm writing a book, and it's called Take Heart, just on my whole journey through varsity, because these have been the hardest years of my life. And so these poems that I call them short words that I've been writing recently. So when I can't write a full poem, I write maybe 4 or 5 sentences, short words, and so they're used at the beginning or at the end of every chapter of my book. So that's a project that I'm working on, with my short words, with my poetry. Secondly, my personal blog, I'm working on that. I want to record more, so this is great because I get to record with you guys. But I want to record more poetry, post it on my personal blog, which is still being changed and made in the form of a website, also called Take Heart, because that's like my anthem in my life. And then I've also got another piece I'm working on, and it's on depression. It's called Peaced, with a couple of people, just about depression in the context of Christianity. So that's something that I want to do in the future. And then last but not least, Becoming, which is a project that I've recently started for empowering women, and it's a platform for people to share. And so that's also where I want to showcase a lot of my work and my poetry on that platform. So it's called Stuck. I wrote it earlier on this year, and this is the one I wrote throughout the workshop. And it's just about how I've never felt comfortable within myself, and so my journey through varsity has forced me to fall into my true identity and to fall into the person that God originally designed me to be. Stuck. She went back to the place where she got stuck. She used keys far too big for her frail dog hands to unlock the door to a past she had been running ever so hastily from. Not the bad type of past, but the one which makes you wonder how you got to this point, how things got so bad, what caused the commotion, and what could remedy the waging wars inside your soul it was great for. First day of a new school in a new country. Already wearing clothes too big to fit, she sat trying to get people's attention. Desperate to fit in, but different did I mention. Feeling cold in an environment conducive for warmth. The days before adolescence settled in. Before the extra weight became a resident of her temple. The days where even if they didn't like you, you liked you, and that was enough. Too naive to know the difference between lust and love, between acceptance and rejection, between depression and just a bad day. The days when her words weren't filtered through the voice of the world, her past. Break time, the most daunting hour, accents so thick that no one could understand what she was trying to say, so all they did was laugh and walk away. And although smiles didn't fade so easily back then and enemies were more rare than friends, no one knew that the tears of a little girl could create wounds bigger than those of our parents' wooden spoons, spared the rod and spoiled the child, but a handful of laughter was a rod big enough to do both. And so from that day on, she yearned to be comfortable within herself, even if it meant being someone different to each and everybody else. Fast forward to her sitting in a coffee shop with a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, with her MacBook open, drinking a big glass of red wine because that's what big girls do, right? Keeping up appearances, looking like a porcelain doll, perfectly carved with a smooth, glossy finish, but hollow on the inside with the chance of cracking at any moment. A walking contradiction, pretending to have it all together because she couldn't afford to let anyone see the floods inside her waiting to come out in the form of tears. She was like a half-empty glass of water, her perception of life wrapped in pessimism. Depression rules in the absence of hope. She had none. Her soul was dry, almost desert-like, fully detached from her past, trying to make do with the mistakes that she believed had built her. Mistakes that added to the internal conflict she felt inside, lonely. Trying to carve a crooked smile on her face as people stared at her, wondering why she was typing so hastily on her keys. Space bar. She had words that she ought to say, but she had no courage to say them. She was convinced that she was the only one who knew what was on her page. But God had been writing her story ever since. And although she had found her identity in the approval of everybody else, God came through in the form of spell check. He filled in the blanks and used autocorrect. At the heart of what she was going through, He was there. Calming her in the form of friends, carrying her in the form of family, and cradling her in the form of words. And so she went back to the place where she got stuck, because God wanted to restore what was broken. He wanted to give her a new heart, one that was whole and one that was open.